You watch them scan a room, a conversation, a text message, hunting for a reason to be insulted. Their eyes dart. Their breathing becomes shallow. They are waiting for a misplaced word. When they find it, their posture shifts. They inflate. They become righteous. They call this trauma. They call this boundary setting. They call this justice. They are lying to themselves. The modern epidemic of chronic offense has nothing to do with sensitivity. It is a highly aggressive, predatory defense mechanism. The person constantly clutching their pearls is not a victim. They are a fragile dictator, violently enforcing the borders of a rotting self-image. By the end of this dissection, you will see the architecture of the modern offended mind. And you will understand exactly why your own ego is the most dangerous parasite currently living inside your skull. Phase 1. The epidermis of outrage. Observe the mechanics of modern outrage. It is never silent. True pain is quiet. True trauma isolates. But the modern offended ego requires an audience. It requires a stage, a spotlight, and a choir of validation. Why? Because the offense is a performance. You believe people get angry because they possess a strong moral compass. You assume their outrage is born from a deep, empathetic connection to the suffering of others. That is the illusion they project. It is the illusion society eagerly consumes because it feels warm and progressive. The clinical reality is much colder. In 1996, psychologists Roy Baumeister, Laura Smart, and Joseph Bowden published a landmark paper that shattered the mainstream understanding of aggression. For decades, the psychological consensus dictated that low self-esteem caused violence. The prevailing theory was that people who felt bad about themselves lashed out to compensate for their inner void. Baumeister dismantled this entirely. He looked at the hard data, from violent criminals to street gangs to domestic abusers, and found the exact opposite. Violence, verbal or physical, does not stem from low self-esteem. It stems from threatened egotism. It stems from individuals who possess a highly inflated, grandiose, and artificial view of themselves, which is suddenly contradicted by objective reality. When a person with an artificially high self-appraisal encounters a situation that implies they are ordinary, flawed, or wrong, their nervous system registers this as an existential threat. They do not feel sad, they feel attacked, and they retaliate with disproportionate cruelty. This is what you are witnessing in the culture of chronic offense. You are not witnessing an epidemic of low self-esteem. You are witnessing an epidemic of unearned, unanchored grandiosity. You are dealing with a population that has been conditioned since birth to believe they are flawless, unique, and morally absolute. They possess a massive, fragile self-concept built on air. And the moment the real world grazes against that fragile bubble, they do not just disagree, they attempt to destroy the person who held the needle. Quick pause. If you're someone who rewatches these videos, who pauses, goes back, thinks about them after, the membership was built for you. On Patreon, you get members-only videos that go further than the public ones, audio versions for when you're driving or training, and the full written scripts to study line by line. $4.99 a month. Click the link in the description and join me on Patreon. Back to the video. Phase 2. The Sociometer Malfunction. How did the human ego become so volatile? To understand this, we must open the nervous system and look at the wiring. Mark Leary, a researcher in behavioral psychology, proposed the sociometer theory of self-esteem. Leary argued that self-esteem is not a fixed objective measure of your actual worth as a human being. It is an evolutionary gauge. It is a psychological fuel gauge that measures one specific, terrifying metric: your current level of social inclusion. In the ancient tribe, if your sociometer dropped, it meant the collective was rejecting you. Rejection meant exile. Exile meant death by starvation or predators. Therefore, a drop in self-esteem was designed by biology to feel terrifying. It was a visceral alarm bell screaming at you to conform, to apologize, to adapt, so you wouldn't be left to die in the cold. Now transplant that ancient, highly sensitive biological gauge into the year 2026. You are connected to a digital hive mind of 8 billion people. You are exposed to thousands of opinions, judgments, and cultural shifts every single day. Your sociometer was built to track the approval of a tribe of 50 people. It is now trying to track the approval of the entire internet. The gauge is broken. It is spinning uncontrollably. When a stranger on a screen posts an opinion that contradicts your worldview, your primitive brain does not see digital text. It sees a physical threat of tribal exile. The sociometer crashes, the survival alarm rings, and the ego, the desperate, panicked ego, rushes in to silence the alarm. How does it do this? By invalidating the source of the threat, by labeling the other person as toxic, dangerous, or evil. If the person disagreeing with you is evil, then their rejection doesn't count. The tribe is safe. The ego is restored. This is the nervous system of modern outrage. It is a biological panic attack disguised as moral superiority. You see this every time someone says, "I feel unsafe," during a philosophical disagreement. They are not unsafe, they are uncomfortable. But their ego has hijacked their vocabulary, forcing them to use the language of physical survival to describe the mild friction of a dissenting opinion. They are weaponizing victimhood to regain control over an environment that terrifies them. Phase 3. The dissonance engine. This brings us to the structural core of the offended mind, the engine that keeps the hallucination running. In their profound psychological autopsy, mistakes were made, but not by me. Carol Tavris and Elliot Aronson dissect the architecture of cognitive dissonance. Cognitive dissonance is the state of extreme mental tension that occurs when you hold two contradictory beliefs simultaneously. Or more commonly, when your deep-seated belief about yourself contradicts your actual behavior in reality. You believe you are a brilliant, objective, rational person, but you just made a spectacularly stupid, emotionally driven decision. The dissonance is agonizing. It feels like a physical tear in the fabric of your identity. To resolve this agony, a healthy mind does something very painful. It updates the self-image. It admits, "I was wrong, I am fallible, I am not the God I thought I was." The fragile ego refuses this pain. Instead of updating the self-image, it distorts reality. It builds a fortress of rationalizations. It blames the boss. It blames the economy. It blames systemic structures. It blames the tone of the person who pointed out the error. It blames the weather. It will blame anything to avoid looking in the mirror. The chronically offended person is running a massive, overheated dissonance engine 24 hours a day. They demand a world without friction because any friction threatens to expose the mediocrity they are hiding from themselves. They demand trigger warnings, safe spaces, and the cancellation of anyone who speaks out of turn. They do not want safety. They want an environment heavily sanitized of any truth that contradicts their delusions. Jonathan Haidt and Greg Lukianoff mapped this systemic collapse in The Coddling of the American Mind. They exposed how modern society has institutionalized these exact cognitive distortions. We have taught an entire generation to engage in emotional reasoning. "I feel offended, therefore you committed an offensive act." We have taught them catastrophizing. This uncomfortable conversation is literal violence. We have taught them mind reading. "You didn't intend to insult me, but I know your subconscious bias was attacking me." These are not intellectual frameworks. They are the desperate, flailing defense mechanisms of a skeleton that cannot support its own weight. When you coddle a mind, you do not protect it from pain. You guarantee that it will eventually be destroyed by reality. A bone that is never subjected to stress becomes brittle. It develops osteoporosis. The modern ego has psychological osteoporosis. It cannot withstand the slightest pressure without shattering. And when it shatters, the sharp edges cut everyone in the room. But why do they bleed on you? Why do they make their internal collapse your problem? Phase 4. The historical echo. To understand the sheer lethality of the offended ego, you must step back from the modern digital landscape and look at history. Human nature does not upgrade, it merely changes its costume. In 1804, Alexander Hamilton and Aaron Burr stood on the cliffs of Weehawken, New Jersey, holding dueling pistols. Aaron Burr was the Vice President of the United States. He was wealthy, he was powerful, he had everything a man could desire. But he possessed a sociometer that was hypersensitive to disrespect and a dissonance engine running at maximum capacity. Hamilton had made disparaging remarks about Burr's character at a dinner party. It was political gossip. It was the 19th century equivalent of a sub-tweet. A sovereign mind would have ignored it. A sovereign mind would have realized that engaging in a duel over a dinner party comment was a catastrophic miscalculation of risk and reward. But Burr was not sovereign. Burr was a slave to his ego. His threatened egotism demanded blood to restore his self-appraisal. He shot and killed Hamilton. In doing so, Burr ruined his own life. He was indicted for murder. His political career evaporated. He died in obscurity, debt, and disgrace. He burned his entire empire to the ground to soothe a momentary sting to his pride. You look at that story and think it is ancient history. You think dueling is barbaric. Yet you do the exact same thing. You just use different weapons. You ruin a decade-long friendship over a misunderstood text message. You torch your professional reputation by flying into a rage at a client who challenged your work. You sabotage your romantic relationship because your partner offered a mild critique of your behavior and your ego decided it was better to burn the house down than admit you were wrong. You are Aaron Burr. You are standing on the cliff, holding a pistol, aiming it at the people you claim to care about, ready to pull the trigger over a bruised self-image. You believe you are merely observing a cultural shift, a generation that has become soft, but you are missing the violence hidden underneath the fragility. When a mind is coddled, it does not become peaceful. It becomes tyrannical. Phase 5, the Freudian firewall. Let us cut deeper. Let us look at the actual organs of the mind. Sigmund Freud, in The Ego and the Id, mapped the treacherous, hostile geography of human consciousness. He described the ego not as a king ruling a domain, but as a terrified rider sitting on top of a wild, blind, violently powerful horse. The horse is the id, a boiling cauldron of primitive, animalistic desires, aggression, sexual impulses, and raw, unfiltered selfishness. The ego's singular job is to steer this beast through the restrictive, judgmental streets of society without getting thrown off and killed. But the ego is incredibly weak. It is constantly bombarded by the chaotic demands of the id from below, the harsh, moralistic punishments of the superego from above, and the cold, unforgiving facts of reality from the outside. To survive this relentless three-front war, the ego deploys a complex system of defense mechanisms. Anna Freud, expanding upon her father's work in The Ego and the Mechanisms of Defense, detailed exactly how the mind lies to itself to survive. When you see a person flying into an outraged frenzy over a minor perceived slight, you are watching these mechanisms operate in high definition. You are watching projection. The ego cannot handle its own internal aggression, its own suppressed bigotry, its own deep-seated, rotting flaws. The psychological tension is too high. It would cause a mental collapse. So, the ego vomits those traits onto the external world. The person who is constantly accusing everyone else of being toxic is almost always the most poisonous element in the room. They are hunting for their own shadow in the faces of strangers. They see manipulation in you because they are a manipulator. They see malice in your words because malice is the only language they speak internally. You are watching reaction formation. An individual harbors a deep unconscious insecurity about their own intelligence, their own morality, or their own value. To defend against this terrifying, whispering doubt, their ego overcompensates by adopting a posture of extreme, inflexible self-righteousness. They become the loudest moral grandstander in the office. They become the hypervigilant activist who can never be satisfied. Their outward outrage is directly proportionate to their internal doubt. The louder they scream about justice, purity, and correctness, the more desperately they are trying to drown out the voice in their head that whispers, "You are a fraud. You are nothing." You are watching displacement. They cannot yell at their boss. They cannot fix their failing marriage. They cannot control the agonizing trajectory of their own life. The frustration builds until it demands release. So they go online and attempt to ruin the life of a stranger who used the wrong word in a 10-year-old post. They displace the aggression from the real threat onto a safe, secondary target. They feel powerful for 5 minutes, unaware that they are just a rat pressing a lever in a cage of their own design. This is the Freudian firewall. It is a highly sophisticated, deeply unconscious software program designed to completely falsify reality so the ego does not have to face the absolute terror of its own insignificance. But Freud only saw the mechanics. He only saw the gears turning in the dark. Carl Jung saw the cosmic tragedy. Phase 6, the Jungian eclipse. Carl Jung, in his masterwork Ion, explored the phenomenology of the self. Jung drew a stark, terrifying distinction between the ego and the self. The ego is just the tiny, illuminated center of your conscious awareness. It is a fragment, a sliver. The self, however, is the massive, unfathomable totality of your entire psyche. Conscious and unconscious, light and dark, order and chaos. The tragedy of modern man, and the root cause of our collective outrage, is the tragedy of ego inflation. When a person becomes disconnected from the deeper self, when they lack a spiritual anchor, a profound purpose, or a connection to the shadow, the ego expands to fill the void. It swells like a tumor. It becomes inflated. The ego begins to believe that it is the entire universe. It mistakes its subjective, tiny, flawed viewpoint for objective cosmic truth. Jung warned that an inflated ego is destined for catastrophe. Because the universe does not bend to the delusions of a speck of dust, reality is undefeated. When the chronically offended person encounters a dissenting opinion, they do not experience it as a debate. Because their ego is inflated to the size of a god, they experience disagreement as blasphemy. They do not feel challenged. They feel annihilated. This is why the reaction is so wildly disproportionate. This is why a harmless joke can ruin a career, why a misunderstood tone can end a decade-long friendship, why a political disagreement can sever a family forever. When the ego eclipses the self, every single interaction becomes a matter of life and death. The person is trapped in a state of constant exhausting warfare, defending borders that do not actually exist, protecting a kingdom that is entirely made of smoke. Look at the most easily offended people in your life. Look at the people who cannot let a single slight go. Look at the ones who spend their days policing the language, the behavior, and the thoughts of others. Are they happy? Are they at peace? Do they radiate strength? No. They are miserable. They are anxious. They are perpetually exhausted. They are prisoners of their own inflation. They have built a prison of mirrors, where everywhere they look, they only see warped reflections of their own fragile identity under attack. They are fighting a war against their own reflections, convinced they are surrounded by enemies. Phase 7. The asymmetry of reality. We must address the asymmetry of the offended mind. The fragile ego demands perfectly symmetrical interactions. It demands that the world contours itself exactly to its preferences. But reality is fiercely asymmetrical. It is jagged. It is unpredictable. This is where the psychological concept of ego depletion becomes a weapon. Every time you get offended, every time you engage in the mental gymnastics required to prove someone else wrong and yourself right, you burn cognitive fuel. You deplete the executive functioning of your prefrontal cortex. The offended person spends 80% of their daily cognitive battery managing their triggers, policing their environment, and constructing their victim narrative. By 2 p.m., they have no mental energy left to actually build their life, advance their career, or cultivate genuine relationships. They have traded their potential for the temporary dopamine hit of feeling right. You watch them sink into mediocrity, blaming the world for their lack of progress, entirely blind to the fact that they spent all their capital defending a sandcastle from the tide. Phase 8. The mirror turns to you. This is where the autopsy shifts. You have enjoyed dissecting the offended masses. You have nodded along as we exposed the fragility of the people who annoy you. You feel a sense of intellectual superiority, knowing the dark psychological mechanisms behind their pathetic outrage. But this blade cuts both ways. Look at your own life. Look at the last time you were genuinely angry. Look at the last time you felt disrespected, overlooked, or insulted. Were you defending an objective truth, or were you defending your ego? When your partner criticized how you handled a situation, why did your heart rate spike? Why did you immediately bring up something they did wrong 3 months ago to deflect the blame? That was your dissonance engine firing. That was your threatened egotism lashing out. When someone cut you off in traffic and you screamed in the safety of your car, your veins popping, what were you actually doing? You were experiencing an ego inflation. You believed that the rules of the road were a personal contract written specifically for you, and that a stranger violating them was an assault on your absolute sovereignty. You are infected too. The modern world has built a customized, algorithmic reality specifically for you. It feeds you content that validates your exact worldview. It shields you from severe discomfort. It isolates you in echo chambers where your opinions are treated as undeniable facts. It has coddled your mind just as effectively as the college campuses you mock. And the result is exactly the same. Your ego has grown fat, lazy, and hyper-reactive. You think you are stoic because you don't complain on Twitter. You think you are above it all because you don't march in protests. But you complain endlessly in your head. You hold on to silent, festering resentments. You cut people off because they drain your energy, entirely refusing to do the hard work of conflict resolution. Are they really draining your energy? Or are they simply refusing to play the supporting role you assigned them in the movie where you are the star? The disease of the ego is not limited to the loud, screaming victims. It is equally, if not more, present in the quiet, arrogant observer who believes they are immune. You use your intelligence not to dismantle your ego, but to build a more sophisticated fortress around it. You intellectualize your fragility. You use dark psychology to analyze others, so you never have to look at yourself. You are hiding. Phase 9. The cure. The assassination of the ego. So, what is the antidote? How do you survive in a society that is rapidly succumbing to this psychological infection? And more importantly, how do you cure yourself? You do not fight it by becoming callous. You do not fight it by adopting the toxic, hyper-masculine caricature of the alpha who pretends he doesn't care about anyone. That is just another mask. Another fragile defense mechanism built by a terrified child. The only way to defeat the ego is to starve it to death. Ryan Holiday, in Ego is the Enemy, outlines the stoic requirement for sweeping the floor. You must do the work without demanding the applause. You must brutally detach your identity from the outcome. You must be willing to be a nobody. But modern psychology offers a sharper, more precise scalpel. Kristin Neff, a pioneering researcher in human psychology, discovered a mechanism that renders the ego completely obsolete. It is the distinct, critical difference between self-esteem and self-compassion. Self-esteem, the very thing the offended mind is desperately trying to protect and inflate, is conditional. It requires you to be better than others. It requires you to be right. It requires you to win. It is a constant, exhausting, unwinnable comparison game. Self-compassion is unconditional. It is the cold, objective recognition of your own flaws, your own failures, your own selfishness, and your own profound mediocrity, coupled with the absolute, unwavering acceptance of that reality. When you practice radical self-compassion, you are not coddling yourself. You are assassinating your ego. You look in the mirror and you say, flatly, I am flawed. I am sometimes remarkably stupid. I am capable of terrible, selfish mistakes. And I do not need the world to pretend otherwise. The moment you accept your own darkness, the world loses its leverage over you. If someone insults you, you do not feel the biological need to defend yourself with outrage. You look at the insult. If it is true, you accept it as data and correct your behavior. If it is false, you discard it as the meaningless noise of a stranger's mind. The ego is no longer threatened because there is no grand illusion left to protect. You cannot break a vase that is already shattered. You cannot conquer a city that has left its gates open. You have stepped out of the mirror room. The era of chronic offense is not a political crisis. It is a psychological rot. It is the inevitable result of 8 billion egos, inflated to the size of gods, colliding in a digital space meticulously designed to monetize their friction. You cannot fix the world. You cannot force the masses to grow up. You cannot logic someone out of a defense mechanism they rely on for survival. But you can cure yourself. You can choose to stop participating in the grand illusion. You can choose to systematically dismantle the scaffolding of your own self-importance. You can stop demanding respect and start building actual resilience. The next time you feel the heat of offense rising in your chest, the next time you feel that desperate, panicked biological urge to defend your image, to prove you are right, to punish the person who made you feel small, stop. Do not speak. Do not type. Do not react. Feel the burn of the threatened ego. Feel the cognitive dissonance tearing at your carefully curated self-image, and let it burn. Let the fragile, false version of you die in that fire. Stand in the flames and watch the hallucination burn away. What is left behind when the smoke clears is the only thing that actually matters. A mind that cannot be offended because it no longer needs the world's permission to exist. A mind that observes the chaos of the offended masses, feels absolutely nothing, and continues walking. If you made it this far, you're not the average viewer. The average viewer left 10 minutes ago. So this is for you specifically. The members-only videos, the audio versions, and the full scripts on Patreon exist for the small percentage who take this seriously. The ones who want the deeper version, not just the public one. Click the link in the description and join me on Patreon. Most won't. That's the point.